Hey everybody, Fratum here, and tonight we're going to install Gentoo Linux. This install is very time consuming. I'm going to cut a lot of the boring compiling parts out just to save time on the install. But this is something that if you're going to do, you can expect to spend 2 hours, probably maybe longer, depending on the speed of your computer, to do this install. Because of that, it's going to be a 2-part series. Part 1 is this video here, and we're going to get Gentoo installed all the way to the point of having a command line Gentoo install that boots up and runs. And then part 2 will be installing X11 and our desktop environment, which I'm planning on doing KDE. So, without further ado, let's move forward. Okay, so I've booted off of the live DVD that you can download from their site, and this is the one that has a full-blown Gentoo install on the DVD, so we can actually look around. The default password is, there is no password, so we're the Gentoo default user, and it even says right here, no password needed for login. So we go ahead and click login, and KDE is loading up. It's going to be a little slow since this is off of a live DVD. So bear with me here. So as you can see, we got a nice little KDE desktop. It's pretty useful. The user handbook is basically going to go through everything that you would want to know about the system. So I recommend thumbing through it if you get a chance and read about Gentoo Linux and the installation process that we're going to go through. It is just a link, so you don't even have to, you can have it on a separate computer if you want and read it while you're doing the install, since there's going to be a lot of waiting time during this install. So it's nice that they include that. Support forums, screenshot uploads, I guess if you're having problems. You can go into their chat room, bug tracker, documentation, all the standard stuff. And then, they've got Chromium installed, Aurora, which is a Firefox browser, and settings, file manager, a bunch of other applications, including an Office suite. So you can actually run off of this if you wanted to run on a system that's not going to run too fast. But you could carry it around on a thumb drive and basically have a Gentoo Linux, but it wouldn't be persistent, so nothing would save. So I wouldn't recommend that. So this install process is very similar to what you would see for Arch. Everything's done from the command line. So we open up a terminal, and the first thing we need to do is become root, sudo su dash, and since it's the live CD, we don't need a password. And we're going to run a program called Parted. That's very similar to fdisk, but when I did fdisk in the last video, people said, why didn't you use Parted? So we're going to use Parted. So we run parted -a optimal dev sda. So this is where we can look at our disk partition by typing print. Notice we don't have any partitions, just a partition table. If you don't have a partition table, you need to make one. So you do make label GPT. Since I already have one, it's complaining that we're going to lose data, but that's okay since it's blank anyways. So there we go. We have our partition table. We're going to create 4 partitions. We're going to create a BIOS partition, a boot partition, a swap partition, and a root partition. The BIOS partition Grub uses so that you can interact with UEFI BIOSes and all that stuff. It is needed. That's one of those partitions that some other distros you never even realize that they make it, but they kind of make it behind the scenes when they do the install. So we do need that. So our first partition, how do we make it? We do mkpart, and it's going to be on our primary disk, and start at sector 1, and it's going to be, oh wait, you know what? Let's set our units to megabytes so that we don't have to type in a bunch of zeros. So unit is megabytes. So mkpart primary 1 20 megabytes. So our BIOS partition will be 20 megs. And we're going to give it a name of Grub. And we're going to set the type to BIOS underscore Grub. And we're going to turn on boot, the boot bit. Okay, so if we type print, we should see that we have close to 20 megabyte partition in slot number 1. Next, we're going to make part primary, and it's going to start at the 21 meg point, and we're going to make it 500-ish. It's actually going to be 500 minus 21, or minus 20, so 480-ish megs. And we're going to name that, name 2, we're going to call it boot. So if we do print, 479, so that's pretty close. So make part primary. This is going to be our swap partition, so we're going to start it at 501, which is where the other one ended. So it's 1 byte after, or 1 meg after. And we're going to end it at 8501, so that should be just around 8 gigs. Since I like to match the memory. I know that's old school and a lot of people don't do that anymore, but that's how I roll. And we're going to name 3 swap. And then we're going to make our fourth one, mk part primary. Started at 8502, so 1 after the last one. And then if you do a -1, it says allocate the rest of the disk. So you don't even have to know the last byte for the disk. You just do -1. Now if we do print, you will see we now have our 8 gigs of swap, our 475 megabyte boot, our nearly 20 megabyte BIOS, and 61 gigs for our root partition. You know what? We didn't name it. Name for root. There we go, root. So grub, boot, swap, and root. That's all we need for this particular install. So we hit quit. And the next thing we're going to do is format our partitions. mkfs.ext2 for dev sda2. So it's this number here. So we're going to make our boot partition as an ext2. I'm not clear. I tried to figure out why people do that for the boot. Maybe it's more safer for the kernel and stuff to be on an ext2 partition. So I'm just going with what is considered best practice for this. And I don't have an answer to why they don't make it ext3 or ext4. So we're just going to stick with the ext2 for this for the time being. So we're going to go ahead and format it. It's bitching about that it was mounted before. That's because this is my second install and I cleared everything, and I guess somewhere it remembers this. Anyways, no big deal. So now we're going to do our root partition, and we're going to make that ext4, SDA4, and enter, and it's done. And then we're going to do make swap on dev SDA3. And that's formatted for swap. And we're going to turn swap on SDA3 so that we have our swap memory. Now, you might be wondering, why didn't I format the first partition? That is the BIOS partition, and Grub will take care of that when we do the Grub install. So that is not something we need to worry about at this point or ever, because Grub will just take care of it. So now we want to mount up these partitions. So the first thing we're going to mount, we're going to add it to the Gentoo. So by default, there's a /mnt/Gentoo directory. So we're going to mount everything in there. So the first thing we're going to mount is our root. let's get out of there. Mount dev sda4/mnt Gentoo. And now we're going to mount boot dev sda2 mnt. Oh wait, we got to make the directory first. Make dir/mnt Gentoo boot. So as you see, we just made it. So mount dev sda2 mnt Gentoo boot. So now if we go into boot, we should have a lost and found in there. So that's fine. And next, we are going to download the stage 3 tarball. This is basically a tarball of everything you need for your system. So you want to be in the your new root system. So mount Gentoo, just to be sure. And then we can run links, https://www. Oops, got my caps lock on. I guess not. www.gentoo.org/downloads. And this is the old-fashioned text-based web browser. And from here, we want to go down to downloads, and we want to download the stage 3. And it's pretty small, 243 megs, so it'll download pretty fast. So we save it, and it's almost done, 30 something, 40, 50%. 75, almost done. We could background it, but it downloads so fast that I don't see the point. Q to exit, and now you'll see we have a tar.bz2 file. So we're going to do tar xv, let me see if I remember this, jpf stage 3-amd64 2017-01 blah 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 blah, and then enter. This is going to take a couple minutes, so I'll fast forward through this. Okay, we're back. So this is giving us our basic system. This is our basic core binaries and everything that we need. This is Gentoo installed with everything except no kernel, no grub. So this isn't a bootable system, but it is a system that has everything you need to where we can run the chroot command and basically be in a working system. But we do have to mount some special directories first. So mainly proc, sys, and dev. So let's do that. Mount -t proc. These are called virtual file systems. They don't really exist. They're built into the kernel. But we need them in order for our system to work. So mount r-rbind /sys/mint Gentoo sys mount -rbind /dev mnt Gentoo dev. So that gives us our devices. This is good because it's gonna already have all the detected stuff that the live CD detected, so that makes things just kind of work. Another thing we want to do so that we know that our networking works is we want to copy our resolve.conf over, which should have been set up by our DHCP server when we booted off of the live CD. So we're going to copy that resolve.conf to mount Gentoo etc. That way our network will continue to work with DNS and all that fun stuff. So now we're going to chroot and basically to our new system, Gentoo. And we want to tell it to run bash. And just to help make things be a little less confusing, You'll see this in most of the guides. We're going to change our prompt so we know we're in the rooted environment. So now we know that we're in root live CD. So we know we're rooted, so we don't get confused and start nuking stuff that we don't want to nuke. We got to set up our source so that we can set up our profile. So source etc profile. Notice we're not doing /mnt/gentoo anymore. That's because we are rooted. Oh, that broke my root. Gonna have to do that again. Or no, it broke my, not my root, it broke my prompt. So probably should run that source command first and then change your prompt. Okay, so now we need to install our portage snapshot. Portage is the package system for Gentoo, and we need to have a snapshot of what's available, and that is done. First we make dir /user portage, portage. So we make a directory for it to store the data, emerge-websync. Why did that fail? Merge-web-rsync. See, I made a typo. And this might take a minute or two. So if it does, I'll end up fast forwarding it. If not, then I won't. So we'll see what happens here. Okay, and we're back. So that basically downloads a cache of what's available for Gentoo from what I understand. And next thing we want to do is there's a system profile that we need to have set up, and we want to tell it that we're going to be running a KDE environment. This will help the compiler optimize things for compiling. So we do that with eSelect. And we got to get a profile list that we can pick our profile from. So if we do profile list, you'll see there's a whole bunch. And we want to do KDE or Plasma. We'll do Plasma. So we'll do profile number 8. So we will do eSelect profile set 6 or 8. Excuse me. That. Oops, see, I typoed again. There we go. That tells the system that we are going to be basically running a KDE Plasma system. And that way things get compiled to be optimized for that type of a system. Gentoo is all about totally optimized Linux. And when installed on your system and optimized, it'll be the fastest running Linux you ever run, in theory. Okay, so next thing we need to do, let's set up our time zone. So the way we do that is we need to go to user share zone info and find your continent, and I'm on America. Oops, wrong one. America, and then you want to look for the city closest to you, and I believe for me, it's Los Angeles. Yeah, I'm in California. So what we do here is we CP Los Angeles to etc local time. LOCALTIME, yes. And then we echo space Los _Angeles space to etc time zone. That will set up our time zone, and then we got a locale This sets up other stuff. And we want to do an update to our profile and source etc profile so that that stays persistent. There we go. It generated the ld.so cache. Now this next step is daunting. We're going to install the kernel. So the way we do that is we have to download the Gentoo sources. So we run emerge Gentoo sources. And this could take a couple minutes. So if it takes too long, I'll fast forward through it. Okay, we're back. So that just downloaded the source file. That wasn't even compiling anything yet. Next thing we need to do is compile the kernel. And the way you do that is to run gen kernel. Okay, so I forgot to install it. So emerge gen kernel. This will take a few minutes. And plus I was typing it wrong. So we'll fast forward through this and we'll be right back. Okay, that wasn't too bad. It was about 3 minutes. And now we're going to compile the kernel. This takes a bit of time. I don't know if you're familiar with the time command, but if you run time and then run a command, when it's done, it'll tell you how long it took. So I'm going to time this one with the time command. Gen kernel all. And I'm going to fast forward to this and we'll be back in a little bit. Go get some coffee, guys. And we're back. So as you can see from the time output, it took approximately 56 minutes to compile the kernel. That is insane. I was so close to aborting this video. It was taking so long. Now that could be because I'm running a VM, but you notice I've got 4 CPUs in here, so you think it would have been a little faster. Okay, so we got the kernel done. The kernel's compiled and ready to go, and now we need to edit our file system table so that our partitions mount up when we boot. So nano etc fs tab, and we got it should be fairly empty, just some examples, and we're gonna add dev sda2 /boot ext2 defaults no a time 02 dev sda4 /ext4 and no a time 01 and then dev sda3 and no mount point because it's swap sw 00 and Control X and save it. And now we're going to set our host name etc conf.d host name, and we'll just call it Gentoo. Oops, I'm so used to using Vim that I want to type :right Q. And save our changes. Host name. And then edit our host file so that this stuff works. All we have to do is add Gentoo to that. Okay, now we want to make sure that DHCP works when we reboot so that our network we get assigned an IP address. So emerge. Hopefully this doesn't take too long. DHCPCD. compiling. And that went fast, thank goodness. After that kernel, I'm scared every time I run an emerge. So next is enable it, our rc-update. So it doesn't use system add like a lot of other systems, and it's not using sysv, so, or system v. It's using sysv, not system d. That's it. But it uses its own update thing called rc update. So we'll add dhcpcd to all the defaults. That's the default run levels. And now let's go ahead and add SSH, emerge virtual SSH. Again, it's going to compile, so this might take a second. Nope, it went fast. And then we're going to install system log so that we can have some logs when things decide to fail. This, if you it scrolled really fast, but you'll see it does tell you how many packages it's going to download and compile. And this one it says 3, so now it's installing 1 of 3, 2 of 3, and then still doing 2 of 3, 3 of 3, emerging it, and then it's going to install it. I think the next long application that we're going to install will be Grub, and hopefully it installs pretty quick. And then we'll be done. We'll have a basic bootable command line only system, and that'll be the end for this video. And then we'll go part 2. I will upload in a few days that shows how to do a GUI, how to install the Xorg and all that stuff. And it should be done any second now. Looks like it. I honestly, if you're still watching this video, guys, I don't know why people like doing this. Am I just lazy? I don't know. I don't think I'm lazy. But I don't like having to compile every damn little thing. And this install is insane. Okay, so what do we just do? Syslog and cronny, I think, is the cron tab daemon. Emerge. I don't know why it's in my notes, but we're going to install it anyways. And it's going to do 2 packages. But this is torture. This, why anyone would want to sit through this, why I'm sitting through this is just a mystery to me. Okay, so now we need to add these to the RC script. So RC update add sshd default and syslog ng default, and then cronny. I think cronny is the cron daemon. Okay, so that's good. Now we'll set the root password so that, you know, we don't lock ourselves out of the system. And okay, and then we have to create our default user. So user add. I guess we could do this, you know, after reboot, but I'd just rather do it now. And we got to add it to all the groups so that things work. CD-ROM's probably not that important. Cron -s/bin, that defines the shell. Fratum. And then we'll set my password. Okay, so the last step is to install Grub. And I don't know how long this is going to take, but we'll probably fast forward through it too, but it should not take anywhere near as long as the kernel did. Whew, that kernel, that was insane. Okay, so to do that, we emerge system boot grub. So we'll see how long this takes. 7 packages, so it should take a few minutes. And it's done. Okay, so next, now we just installed Grub binaries, but we have not installed Grub to the system, or we haven't installed the boot sector. So let's do Grub. Is it Grub 2? No, Grub install /dev SDA. Okay, so that just installed it to the boot sector. Now we're going to create the Grub menu. Make config -o, or not the menu, but the thing that the menu gets built off of. Boot grub .cfg. And done. And now in theory, if we exit out of this system, notice I lost my custom prompt too. That's nuts. Where am I? Okay, so because I see mount in the path, I now know I'm out of the chrooted environment. So get out of there. We gotta unmount some of that stuff that we mounted before, mainly unmount umount /mnt gentoo dev. Ooh, it says it's busy. Dev that PTS. This is how you get those virtuals down. And then Gentoo boot proc. By unmounting them, it forces the system to save things that needs to be saved that might be cached. So you want to unmount all this stuff. And it's bitching there, and that's okay. So now we're going to reboot. Actually, I'm going to shut down now. And because I want to manually take out the ISO image. Okay, is it recording? Video capture. Okay, so here we are, booting up. And we got our Grub menu. It's booting. And this is going to be anticlimactic, guys, because this is just going to be the command line version of Gentoo, because we're probably looking at another half an hour minimum to an hour to install a GUI. And that's if we don't install KDE. We're probably looking at, if we do KDE, another hour to 2 hours. So let's see if I can log in. I don't have a keyboard. And it failed. Oh, there we go. I minimized the screen and then it came back. So, we have our swap, we have our memory, no htop. See, we don't even have simple. Oh, we have probably top. There we go. We see our 4 CPUs. Let's see, do we have network? IP-ADDR. We do. Should be able to ping the internet. And we have it. So there you go, guys. We have Gentoo command line install. The next thing would be to install GUI, and this video is already way too long, so we'll look at doing that in the next episode. Well guys, my final thought on this is that Gentoo Linux is very hardcore. This is for the hardcore Linux user who just doesn't really want to deal, I'm even saying that wrong, who just likes pain. To have to compile every binary in the system, with the exception of a few core stuff that was in that stage 3 tarball, this is just too much work, guys. It's too much time. The kernel alone took forever to compile. Maybe if we went in and optimized the kernel and cut a lot of things out, maybe we could have cut the time down, but I don't think we could cut it down by much. Back in the old days, when I first got into Linux, you had to hand compile your kernel. If you wanted drivers for your Ethernet card, or if you got a new SCSI controller and the drivers weren't in there, you had to hand compile. And I was having flashbacks. I would not recommend Gentoo to the average user. I would not recommend Gentoo to even the semi-hardcore user. This is for someone who really likes to experiment with source code level compiling and optimizing. If you're into that, then you're going to love it. If you have the time to sit through compiling crap. Now, I have read that once you get it running, it runs great, and there's not as much compiling, but I don't know. If I install new software all the time, and it seems like anytime you want to install something new, it's going to need to be compiled. Anytime you want to do something, if you want to upgrade your kernel, you're going to need to recompile. So if you like doing that stuff, then yeah, go for it. You'll love it. Other than that, I don't recommend this. So, and this was just getting to a command line install, something you could run headless. Maybe you'd make a good server, or maybe a good game server, like maybe run Minecraft on it or something. I don't know. I'm going to do a follow-up video to this in probably a week or so. As soon as I get the energy and the desire to torture myself again. And in that video, I will install a graphical desktop using Xorg or X11, whatever they call it today. And KDE desktop, just because that seems to be the one that people like for Gentoo, from what I've seen. So there will be a follow-up, and it'll probably be just as long of a video, and we'll see how that goes. I've done it. I installed it on another computer. Took all day to do a base install, and then install Xorg, and then install FVWM for my window manager, which is a really lightweight window manager, and it still took pretty much all day to get it to the point where it was usable. And it didn't even look nice. It was the old FVWM 95 interface, which looked like an old Windows 95 box with crappy fonts. So I don't expect a lot, but I'll do it. From the CD, the KDE environment looks beautiful. So hopefully I can duplicate that on a live system. Anyways, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful night. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.